Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Great. And just a reminder of our district mission and priorities for academic excellence to recruit and retain quality staff, to manage our resources, and to have great community relations. So can we please do a roll call and establish a quorum?
Dominic.
Here.
Fields.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
McConnell is absent. Silva.
Can we have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
I will make the motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Fisher.
Aye.
Fields.
Aye.
Dominic.
Aye.
Silva.
Aye. Great. Now's the time for open forum. If there's anyone who would like to communicate with the entire board, now would be the time. Okay. All right. Then we will continue on forward with our consent items. We have our minutes, our bills, financial reports, and then hirings and resignations. And on hirings and resignations, we'll be pulling out two to talk about separately, a hiring for Aspen Cloninger and then a transfer for Karen Shannon. So if we could pull those two out. And then when anybody's ready to make a motion for the rest of the consent items.
I will make a motion for those consent items with the removal as Bonnie spoke of.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Fisher.
Aye.
Fields.
Aye.
Dominic. Aye. Silva.
Aye.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So for Aspen Cloninger, so she's still under contract with Fort Dodge Community School District. So it'll be, hers would be pending the release of her from Fort Dodge to be able to be hired for our third grade opening.
Okay,
And then Karen Shannon's will be based on her contract, because it's going to be a modified contract from her one that she was given.
Yeah. I guess I think the minutes has to say how much her contract is
Sure.
and for how many days.
Yeah, so her contract's gonna be for $90,000 and a 220-day contract.
so we're looking for a separate motion for those.
I would like to have
Two.
two separate motions.
Two separate?
for those,
Okay.
yeah.
So if we could look at a motion for approval pending the release of the Fort Dodge contract for Aspen Cloninger
And then the background checks.
and background checks and all the other due diligence to hire somebody. So if anyone wants to make a motion for her,
I'll make that motion. Everything you just said.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dominic.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Fields.
Aye.
Silva.
Aye. And then the modified contract for Karen Shannon.
Mhm.
So we're looking for a motion to go ahead and approve her with their contract salary of $90,000 for a 220-day contract.
For the high school principal job.
Make that motion.
A second.
Okay. A motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Fields.
Aye.
Dominic.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Silva.
Aye. Okay. Moving on to old business. This would be, first of the old business is asbestos removal at the 204 West Madison, which is the old business office building.
Yep, so we had two bids, one from REW Services for $97,602, and then another one from Environmental Property Solutions for $47,350. The scope of the work from both businesses, both companies was the exact same, so.
It's
we
a
have-
huge difference.
Yeah.
Isn't there?
I'll
Everyone
let you
didn't
guys
meet the
make
job,
the
apparently.
decision that you think is most appropriate, but and the timelines are both the same for completion to be end of August.
And we think the cheaper one is gonna do the job with,
They
it's spec that way.
they all had good reference. They both had good references.
Good.
either way.
I move we approve the bid for asbestos removal and for 47,000, I'm looking at it here, 47,350 to Environmental Property Solutions.
I will second that motion.
Okay, motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dominic.
Aye.
Fields.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Sylvia.
And what is the completion date, estimated completion date for that?
For demolition,
No, for asbestos.
Asbestos
removal.
removal,
Oh,
because it
it'd
has
be-
to happen prior to demolition, correct?
right, it'd be end of August.
And then demolition for that.
Because then once they get nearing completion with the asbestos, then they'll start doing the fencing and everything to get ready, and then they'll have to do the playground preservation of the playground equipment that's just
Yep.
like this far off the building, whatever. And then they'll fence around it and then start taking it down shortly thereafter.
Any other questions on that one? So then the second thing on old business is the 23-24 student construction project.
Yep, so we have just some initial, kind of initial sketch there from Mr. Davis. There's gonna be no action taken on this tonight, it's just more of a discussion, and if there's any feedback based on the initial design that he's proposed here. With this particular thing, we did get a plumbing bid back, which would change drastically depending on any modifications that we were going to make to this.
The plumbing bid, I assume, includes all the fixtures.
Would be fixtures, labor, materials.
Hookup.
And it would be more than double that.
I was gonna say, that's gonna be a big item in that bid, yeah.
My personal first glance at it was kind of overkill. As far as, yes, we need new bathrooms and we could maybe do something different, but to go from 3 to 6 women's bathrooms plus 2 additional outdoor use facilities. Not to, I mean, men as well, but women need it more than men typically. It just seemed to be, I think, a little more than what we might need. But I'm not saying we shouldn't do something with that bathroom, but
What other feedback might you have for Mr. Davis?
On Facebook, saw some comments on this and, the idea of having it, function as a changing room
Mhm.
for, visiting teams as well, for all 3 sports that utilize that facility. I think it would be worth considering. And I don't know if there are space requirements for a changing room, but I could see just, chopping off a couple of stalls would open up a little more space.
well, and your plumbing cost is gonna be one of your largest expenses, so.
So I can have him do kind of a mock-up that would add, I think you'd be looking at more than doubling this size though to add locker rooms.
Locker room,
Mhm.
But you're
Would
talking
you
more
need-
like just getting rid of some of the toilets and having just more room.
just a little more room, yeah.
I could
I
change.
guess I've not really gone in,
Not really a locker room so much as just space.
Because the current footprint that he's got on this with the covered areas is looking at 32 by 32. I don't know the exact size of our locker rooms, but if I had to guess, they're probably kind of in the neighborhood of like a 25 by 25, I would assume. So.
Is there been any kind of a group, a committee, for better, lack of a better name, put together, like with,
For a student construction project.
no, to kind of plan this thing,
Um,
other
so-
than just Kirk drawing it out?
So Kirk and I and Teresa Greene sat down and looked at this solely from a student construction lens. And then to bring to the board for feedback and input.
Shouldn't Dave be included in the planning of it though, the athletic director, or activities director?
He could be, we didn't, it wasn't that we made a decision to include him or not, it was, we just looked at it from what's an option that we could do with that class, and what's a project that they could do, that would also be a good benefit to our school district as well.
And what, for this project, remind me what funnel it falls in as far as funding?
I'd have order say.
Okay.
It'd be good to have a meeting with Dave and several other, maybe a couple coaches or something, and a board member or two. And,
The first,
just have a sit down and kind of hammer it out maybe a little more thoroughly.
I think we need to do that before our July meeting, because we'd be needing to look at approving something there.
And, I just think that
What about John? What
$200 jobs are
Mhm.
a big price tag.
And is there a possibility of, I don't know, if I'm like micromanaging this a little bit, but just a generic locker room that's not specifically tied to boys or girls, but just, so you don't have to have one for boys and one for girls.
Yeah,
How
it doesn't
often
have
do
to
you
really
have-
be a locker room.
Do you have concurrent?
Almost every soccer game.
Just an area with closed
Soccer
off some
and track,
benches
yeah.
or something, so you can sit down.
Track and
I
field.
don't think you need to store things. But I think it'd be good to have a group get together and kind of maybe do a little more thorough job of thinking this thing through.
Yeah, we can do
before-
Sounds like Steve might want to be on that group.
Steve's not gonna be around a lot the next
Well,
month.
Steve will
so.
be on the committee or the board that would approve it, so.
Well, I could,
I'll touch base with John.
Yeah.
From the facility
John would be
standpoint.
good too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we'll get a couple of coaches together and we'll go from there.
Sounds
But
good.
this is gonna service not only the football field, but the baseball field and
then
for
Soccer and
track.
track as well.
soccer and
Yeah.
track, yeah.
Yeah. And right now at a track meet, do the kids, if they need to change, or do they go out in that building to the south there? Or do they come into the
They change in
school
the middle
here?
school or they change
Prior
on
to
the
that.
bus?
On the bus.
Before they even get here.
Yeah, yeah. So how much of a need is there for a substantial change
I mean,
here? I don't even know.
I think one of the things we could do is we could do some research based on, I mean, I don't want to
Like
say,
what
well,
other
we just have to
schools
do
have.
what every other school does, but we can just kind of see the options that other schools may present.
Right.
Or maybe the track coach and the baseball coach and the football coach need to sit down and, think, what do we need in a little building like that?
Mhm.
I don't know.
Good start for
Yeah,
feedback.
for sure. Yeah, that's good.
So no action on that one tonight, so that's good feedback. If you think of anything else, just
Send it to Steve.
Send it to Brett. Okay, then we'll be moving forward to reports and correspondence for the superintendent's report.
You know.
Explain that.
Yes. So, kind of have our map data from the year, just as a reminder though, this is very much a baseline. So, it's our first crack through it, and then, MAP is actually shifting what they're doing next year. So, right now MAP is an adaptive assessment, and as kids do better, the questions get more challenging, the grade level and the rigor rises, and as they may not do as well, then the questions become easier, the rigor drops. And they can see a wide variety of grade level content. For example, if they are in 6th or 7th grade, if they're doing really, really well, they could be seeing questions that would be 9th and 10th grade and 11th grade standards. So what they're actually shifting to next year is that things are going to be more centralized or localized to their actual grade level. So if they're a 6th grade or 7th grade student, they're going to see a lot more 6th and 7th grade standard questions. Their whole goal and purpose with that is just the linking studies that they've done with all of their state assessments, which our current state assessment, it's all within the grade level that the student is in. So they're all content level or like core level standards. And that's what MAP is kind of shifting back to. So just kind of walk through each of the buildings, and then one of the points at the end I'll bring up is just how or what MAP predicted our students would do on our state assessment, and then how our students actually did. And then during the July meeting, we'll look at our actual state assessment data. So looking at the elementary, they had just kind of a slow uptick there with math. If you look at a whole year, that whole year's growth, they grew about 5 points in math and about 6 points in reading, which is pretty tremendous actually when we look at it. Going from 56 to 61%. We had just a district benchmark or district goal of having 60% of our kids proficient. So they were ahead of that in both areas. I know that if Audrey was here right now, one of the things that she had said, she was not really thrilled with her data, but the one thing I pointed out, I said, well, if the elementary grew 5 and 6% in both content areas every year for 5 more years, I said in 5 years from now, I said, you'd be pretty darn thrilled with yourself. School improvement doesn't happen overnight. It's a slower process, kind of a slower beast. So It's pretty solid there. Moving down to the next slide, that's growth targets met. So MAP determines a projected growth goal for each student. And so this is the percent of students who met that particular growth goal. So we look at 3 different windows: fall to winter, winter to spring, and then fall to spring. Math was good. We just kind of kept going up and up and up, which means that students continually were meeting that growth target. And then reading, well, we did have a dip in the winter to spring. Looking at that whole overall picture, that fall to spring, more than half of our kids met those benchmarks, which is pretty good. And then looking at elementary there, this is growth shown. So this gets a little confusing sometimes. So the one that is the most impactful really is that fall to spring. That's the one we'd really like to see the highest. That is the whole year. So where they started in the fall, and then how did they do from the fall all the way through to the spring. So even if a student grew, 10 points or something like that from fall to winter, and they might have dropped 7 or 8 points from winter to spring, we'd still look at that overall picture from fall to spring to say how many points did that kid actually grow. And growth shown as with MAP is literally 1 point. So the kind of interesting thing here with math for elementary, we only had 4 kids who didn't grow at all from kindergarten through 4th grade in math. So, which is pretty darn impressive. It's really hard to do. So even that 93% is still pretty good. We do shoot for 100%. I'd been asked by a couple of teachers of, should we maybe lower that? And then my question was, well, which kids would you be able to look at in your class and say, it's okay if you don't grow this year? So when we kind of look at it from that lens, it kind of changes that conversation just a little bit.
What explains the consistent winter lags in all of these?
It can be the number of weeks of instruction that have happened. It can be some of the breaks that are in place there. We do have a longer Thanksgiving break than most, so we have a week off there, and then we have the 2 weeks in winter. And so for some kids that can be even that 2 to 3 weeks there can be enough of a lag.
Interrupts progress.
Can be enough of an interruption, and then we do take that. Assessment pretty quickly right after our Christmas break there when we come back. But that's intentional, just so that we have kind of a consistent window of when basically the map kind of tells us about the time frame or the number of weeks of instruction that we should really be looking at, so we can get as much of a national comparative as possible. So that's kind of where we positioned the assessment window when we did. So we can move into the middle school. I don't know if you want me to go through that much narrative with each building, but. So math had an increase in math, about 6 points, which is pretty good. But then we had just as much of a drop in reading. It was just kind of a consistent drop over the year. You can kind of see how that aligns up with our growth targets met. We did very strong actually with our math growth, and then reading wasn't where we want it to be. And then I say that aligned with the exact same with the growth shown as well.
I mean, I assume you've talked to staff about all this, and what are the hypotheses on?
Yeah, so that would have been the work that the principals did with the principals and coaches did with their teams at the end of the year in those last 4 days before they left for the summer.
Did they draw a conclusion as to the lack of progress? Or have they really gotten to that point yet?
I'm going to wait for our new administrators to come in and take a handle of that.
Yeah.
And kind of the same picture then with our high school as well. It kind of almost mirrors what the middle school did. Not as big of a fall off in the literacy or the reading, but started pretty strong and just kind of tapered off towards the end of the year.
Is it typical to see a reduction in growth, a difference that this big a difference between elementary to middle and high school?
Not this large of a gap.
Okay.
That's a little more unusual, I would say. And that's just solely based on experience that I've had with it. So,
Definitely have some improvement.
what's that?
We have room for improvement.
We do, and again, this is the one thing I want to keep reiterating is that it's baseline. It's our first year.
Mhm.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
The last two slides that I'll get at is so looking at our state assessment scores versus kind of what MAP said we would do. So in this first one, this is for ELA and writing. So MAP predicted that we'd have, we were almost spot on with elementary. Middle school, MAP said we wouldn't have as many kids proficient, and that kind of our kids proved the math wrong, which is fantastic. And then even more so at high school. So according to MAP, they would only get 55% of our kids would be proficient in ELA and writing. We had almost 70. So
Which is better.
which is fantastic. That's
And
fantastic.
is MAP just our internal tool? It's not used in our report card?
So
Not that
it's
not
also
public
our
information, but it's not.
So it's also our ELI screener, so early literacy implementation screener, that we use for that. And it's our own benchmark and diagnostic. It's one of the questions that I had asked when I first started was, how do we know how we're doing? And I got a lot of different answers. So this is a great way for us to know how we're doing at different points throughout the year. So, and then kind of looking at math, again, it's pretty darn close. So we had a pretty good indication as to how our students were going to perform on our state assessment. So, and now we have a different data mining tool called 5-Star, which I talked about earlier this year. So 5-Star will allow us to specifically pull out those students. So we're on the targeted, the SL list right now at the middle school for students who are receiving special ed services and the amount of growth that they make. So 5-Star will allow us to isolate out those kids from our data. And we don't have to do any of that by hand, no. We're able to pull it out and show a comparison between them and any other student.
Is that a service we pay for as well?
Yeah. So the amount of hours that Karen won't have to spend on spreadsheets anymore. So just pretty excited. So, and then teachers will also have access to it as well. So they'll be able to pull their advisories, their actual classrooms, they can pull it by content area, so they pull it by student and specifically look at each individual student as well.
So what are your feelings after the first year being here and doing all this evaluation? What are your thoughts?
I'm very optimistic, and very positively optimistic too, that we have a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of room for growth, which is good. I think we're in the right spot with where we need to be, especially with our math curriculum. We just got our feet wet really with our literacy curriculum in K4. We just added it in 5th grade. We're doing a lot of work around the major works of the grade with our math. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot of positive growth there. And then I think our literacy is going to start matching it once we start identifying what's the most essential stuff to be going after, and then truly going after it from a systems perspective. I don't think we've ever done that before.
What kind of feedback are you getting from staff on this process and the results and the information, the data that you've gotten from it?
Yeah, actually, so one of the ones I would point to is I got an email from a teacher about 3 days after the spring window opened and said that she was really pleasantly surprised at how much kids are starting to care about this now that teachers took the time to go through with all students, showed them where they're at, showed them what their goal was, talk and just started to make growth a part of the conversation of what they're doing in their schools. So a couple of kids that she had referred to had said, well, they were really shooting for a certain number to hit and they didn't hit it, and they were like kind of bummed out by it, and they were wanting an opportunity to retake it. And so the comments were that it was really nice to see kids care about their academics and kids care about their growth. And I think when you make it a focus, a point of emphasis with kids, they really truly start caring about it just as much as we want them to.
Hard to care when they don't know where they're at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it was happening I know it's happening in high school and advisory, same thing with middle school and then like their home base. And then elementary, each teacher was going through with all of their students and showing them their growth goals, showing them what they need to do, and talking about some of those behavioral attributes that they were wanting to see out of them to kind of start hitting the marks that we want them to hit. So
Remind me, is ISAPs twice a year
ISAS,
Yeah.
once a year,
or once a year? Just at that.
towards the end of April. Thankfully, it's only once a year.
Well, it's hard to have expectations if you don't have any metrics to figure out where you're at or where you want your expectations to be. And it's hard for kids or anybody to succeed if they don't have expectations.
Right.
So this is good.
Anything else for superintendents? Okay. Any other comments, or we'll move on to board committee reports? Any board committee reports?
It's kind of committee, and we probably need to have more a formal committee is for Pebble.
All for the vote.
Voted Pebble, sorry, thank you. Brett and I did meet and kind of had a little gist of something, but I think we need to kind of get even a bigger emphasis going on that, so.
So that election will be coming up in November. So it's a big pot of money for our kids and for our schools.
And without it, we would sink.
I did attend that Board of Adjustment meeting last month that went for 5 hours on
Solar. Yeah.
on the solar thing, and the concern that was brought to my attention, that's why I went to the meeting, was because the 2 years that project's under construction is the school district's the county and the school district are gonna suffer some in their property tax revenues. And I think they're working on, I was talking to the county treasurer the other day, and she said they're working on a revised application that will hopefully alleviate some of that 2-year deficiency in the property tax. I don't know, did you hear about that?
Yeah, Mike Holden reached out to me, and because I think he's one of the ones on the committee that might have voted.
He was
the
the
only one who
chairman,
voted
yeah.
the other way.
Yeah.
And had given me some of that same information, and had started to state how it would be a good benefit for our schools once it was completed or once it got through. So
I think
there's
some debate on that.
I think there's still some
Yeah.
things that need to be worked out.
Yeah.
One of the things, Mike is really good at sharing the information that he gets when he has it. So I asked him, to follow up with me as soon as he could with once he knows more. So
School Foundation met, and they will be giving up to 10 scholarships for $2,000 to like secondary post-high school, so kids that have already graduated. And then they gave out a lot of scholarships at the last awards, and they just wanted me to reiterate, they never have enough applicants. So if you know any juniors that are going to be seniors, tell them to apply for every scholarship they can.
Yeah, kids don't realize the pot of money that's out there available to them.
There's a lot of generous.
scholarships highly
Really?
required, it seems. There's this one, if we were talking about scholarships, there's a Wells Fargo scholarship that I sat on it was maybe a 3-minute meeting with, and it's for former graduates from Greene County that can apply. I think it's $12,500 a year, as long as they have graduated from. And there was one particular student she's attending the University of Iowa. She's had it all 4 years. And I think in 2 of those years, she's been the only person to actually apply and then get it. And then I think in the other 2 years, she shared it with one other person. So, but that's for former graduates and not current, like actual current students. So that's a little different, but
Have we had any more update on a 501c3 status? I know it's my triggering question, but I forgot to ask.
No, they're waiting to hear back from another attorney that they've hired for that, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Other administrator reports, we all should have the link for the update there. Any other questions on any of that? All right, then any other reports or correspondence? Okay. All right, moving on to new business. School driving permit. Michelle, this is where you go.
I see we have a very large crowd this evening for that, just Isaac. Isaac, we just want to go over a couple things on this paper first. I'm just looking at the document, which you should have one similar to that from the treasurer's office or from the DOT. So basically, what I would like you to do first is stand up, tell us your name, where you live, and why you need a school permit, why you would like a school permit.
My name is Isaac Carver. I live here in Jefferson and 1404 Kirkwood Avenue, out kind of off Old 30. I would like a school permit today because it'd be convenient for me and my family, for myself to get to school early in the mornings, for lifting and other sports activities that I have after school, and any extracurricular that I need to get to.
Okay, so now we're just gonna look at, highlight a couple items here on your application. So you are allowed with this permit to drive from your house to school, and back. If you need to stop and get gas somewhere along the way, that's okay as well. I know sometimes you might have practice, you might lift at the high school practice out here, like for football, and as long as it's a high school or a school function in the school district, you're okay. Yep. You are allowed to drive, let's see if I can get it right this time, between 5 a.m. and 10 p.m. So if the bus gets back at 10:15, you need to find a different ride home. That's the rule. That's the rules. It's up to your folks to decide, but you can have up to one other person that's not a family member in the car with you, but if, like a friend, but that friend has to be at your house and go, not you stop and pick them up along the way. Stop for fuel. One person in your household, yes. When are you allowed to use your phone while you drive?
Never.
Never. Good answer. And then if you do have a violation, your license can be revoked or suspended for up to 6 months, and then that puts you back to begging for rides from mom, dad, and friends. That's not fun. And this school permit is actually given or granted to you kind of by the school board, so we're all as well. And actually anybody else can turn you into, so I don't know that. So, just don't give anybody a reason to notice you. Okay, so the next thing then I would need, unless you have any questions, would need a motion from somebody to approve the school permit for Isaac.
I move we approve the school permit for Isaac Carver.
I'll second.
Okay, motion in a second, please call roll.
Fisher.
Aye.
Dunbar.
Aye.
Fields.
Aye.
Silva.
So then Bonnie will sign it, and then you still have to go to the courthouse and do all the rest.
Thank you.
Drive safe.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully.
I should-
All right, moving on to fundraiser requests. It looks like we have one fundraiser request for the football golf.
You don't need to
I
stay
said
if
you
you
don't
don't
need to
want
stay if you
to.
want to go. You're more than welcome.
You could stay.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any questions, otherwise we were looking for a motion to approve the fundraising request for the football golf tournament.
Move we approve the fundraising request for the football golf tournament.
I will second that motion.
Okay, motion in a second. Please call the roll.
Dominic.
Aye.
Fields.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Silva.
Okay, Okay, moving on to item C under new business, the middle school miscellaneous exterior buildings bids for removal.
So we received a bid for $700 to remove both greenhouses, all equipment and contents, to remove the 8-foot by 12-foot shed and all contents, and to remove some of the remaining equipment and the parts of the, they put it so nicely as the aquaculture building. We just always call it the fish shack. And so this is from Iowa Gardening for Good. They're a 501c3 that focuses on growing food for food pantries involving volunteers to help grow and distribute produce. The one thing I'll just say is, despite this bid, it doesn't take away from the fact that we still have Andy Murphy on contract to do. There's still some demolition work that he needs to do with a couple of concrete pads and whatnot. So that would still apply to this, but they're offering $700 to remove it themselves and the contents in those buildings that has been untouched for a while.
They
Tracy
want-
Wait, they're paying
Blackmur's
us
here.
They're
if you
right
have
there, actually,
questions.
so
They're paying us $700?
they will be
Yes.
paying us $700, yes. And they will be taking it.
So they want the buildings.
You could use them.
And to be honest, the greenhouse buildings in particular are the value of a lot of the equipment in it.
Right.
You know, not all of it may work, but
Yeah.
we're actually in the process of, we're gonna put up at least one greenhouse. And so we could use a
Nice.
lot of that, which would reduce the cost. And actually, the church turned around and say they would offer $700 to help make it happen. So that's where the money
Awesome.
came from.
Very good.
The one question I guess I would ask on this is, I know there was a timeline that was fairly short on that. You know, we have a lot of people lined up, so our goal would be to get everything out on Saturday.
This Saturday?
Yeah. But there's rain coming.
Oh,
Oh,
So the question is,
Sorry.
given the nature of volunteers, is it possible we can go to the next Saturday, or is that not a possibility?
that would be fine, because my assumption, just in conversation with Andy, is that it's gonna be after the 4th of July. So for him anyway, so he's pretty swamped as it is, and this, of course, is pending our board approves it, but,
Because we have, right now, we have 15 people lined up tentatively that said they would donate Saturday of their time
Sure.
to do it with all the trailers and everything. They go
Sure.
out. So I'm assuming you can drive back there and load up.
I'm just curious, where are you gonna redirect them at or use them?
They'll be at our base site, which is where I live, over by Madrid.
Oh, okay.
And so we currently have a site there and it's set up to irrigate. And we have about 15 acres of vegetables we grow there.
Hmm.
And so this year we, instead of contracting the growth of some of the vegetable plants, we actually started growing them. We have a cool, basically a truck, semi-reefer truck box. That's our cooler system. We actually made it a hot box with growth lights.
Mhm.
And so with the amount of money we saved by doing that, it's like we want to do more of it.
Hmm.
But we grew over 20,000 pepper plants alone, let alone other things. To start on what we're doing.
That's awesome.
We donated 1.2 million pounds. We'll have easily over 3,000 volunteers moving through it this season.
Wow.
So we're at a point, the greenhouses, and the nice thing on this is that after measuring it, we have an old cargo unit on there, and this will actually mount right on the walls of the old cargo unit.
Oh, good.
great.
That's a win-win.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, great. Good to see you, Tracy. Haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like we've got a bid that we need to accept. So if we could have a motion to accept the bid as written in there.
I'd make the motion that we accept the bid as written from the Iowa Gardening for Good for the greenhouses
For a total of $700.
for a total of $700.
I will second that motion.
Motion and a second. Please call roll.
Davidic, aye. Fields,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Silva.
Aye. Next up, new business D. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Brenda.
No, I just said thank you to him.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Yeah.
FCCLA out-of-state traveling request. This is for their leadership conference. Thank you. Good to see you guys. This is for their conference, their national leadership conference that they've done before. And so they'll be taking 5 students to Denver, Colorado for their conference. So really, we're just looking for board approval since they're traveling in the state
And they don't need any funding from us.
No,
Alright.
raised money.
I move to approve their trip.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Fisher,
Aye.
Fields,
Aye.
Dominic,
Aye.
Solo.
All right, next up on new business item E, an AED purchase. And it looks like we're, yeah.
So
people-
there's a total of 8 there that we're looking at purchasing. The ones that we have now are end of life, need to be replaced. Just the cost of the batteries and the pads and everything right now that we'd be looking at. Gotta get some advice to just replace all the units. We are actually gonna be turning back in 7. So we're getting a credit for those 7 of $150 each, so or $1,050 total. So with a total plus freight and shipping, we're looking at $15,625.34 to get 8 AEDs for our district.
Using every building, I
I
assume.
mean, every building will have one accessible for the for baseball, track, football, and then of course one in the gym as well. So
And is that a couple expense or?
Sorry, you said every building out here,
mhm.
so that, and then another, so,
So
Do we
then
need
there's
sorry.
where are they now? So there's 3 total in high school. There's one in the Career Academy, the main high school,
Oh, okay,
in the gym.
there's more than that in a building.
Elementary, middle school. And then there's one, I think there's actually 2, there's 2 here. So that would be 7, and then we have one that they can take with them, that coaches can take with them.
This general fund expense, I assume.
You can buy out of Pebble,
Bethel? Oh, okay.
it's equipment.
I would make a motion to approve the AED purchase.
Pebble.
I move we approve the purchase of the 8 AEDs.
So it sounds like we have a motion from Michelle, so would you want to second it?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yep,
I will speak.
I'll
I
translate.
thought that was a question. not a motion. Sorry.
So do you want to second that, Steve?
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion in a second, please call the roll.
And sorry,
Oh, yeah.
discussion more,
Yeah, go.
which I technically can still do.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is, I do not know the price of my AEDs, and I've been out of healthcare for a little bit now.
Mhm.
This is comparable, I mean, we're not,
Yeah, Lita Bauer shopped around for us.
okay, perfect, that's all I want, yep. I'm good.
Any other questions? Okay, please call the roll.
Dominic,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Fields,
Aye.
Solo.
Aye. All right, and then 23-24 calendar change.
Yeah, just had to make a slight adjustment. If you were to look at it at face value, you probably wouldn't know what you were looking at. So you'll notice in the top left-hand corner, our total number of days hasn't changed, but the total number of hours is actually 4 more hours, and that's all based off of high school hours. So it was pointed out to us by one of our high school teachers that we were short in our number of minutes or hours of instruction to be able to award credit for a Carnegie unit. So what we had to do was at high school, we removed seminar out of high school and added that time back into the regular instructional time. So they went from 63 to 67 minutes. And then to the first 2 Monday PDs of the school year for the high school will not happen. They'll just have a regular full day of school. And that will get us back to being over that 3,600 minutes or 60 hours of instruction in a trimester to ensure that we have the correct number of minutes to fulfill that, to be able to award credit for a unit that we offer for our kids.
Will the elementary and middle schools still have PD on those first 2
They
days?
will.
And I think that change is noted on the bottom left of the calendar
It is.
too,
Yep.
along with the hours. So we would want to go ahead and just make a motion to approve the official calendar change for 23-24.
And along with that, it would be interesting next year to assess if seminar, changing it, how it went. I mean, did we lose, did we gain, are we about the same? So,
Wait, and you're removing, seminars being removed completely for the
Completely.
entire year, not just the.
Yeah,
first?
it had to, but in tries 2 and 3, because they actually have 2 more days of instruction, possible. We didn't have to remove any Monday PD time out of those tries just because there was just happened to be enough minutes.
I will make a motion to approve the calendar changes for 23-24.
I will second that motion.
Motion and a second, so please do roll call.
Fisher.
Aye.
Fields.
Aye.
Dominic. Aye. Sylvia.
Aye. Okay, and then revised board policy 500.
Since all we're doing is correcting something that we missed last
Yes,
month.
It was the
It was
date,
a,
wasn't it?
no,
Yeah.
it was the
The mask.
address.
Yeah.
Or the date.
We don't
Thank
use,
you, Tori.
we don't
The
use second
random.
reading.
Oh, I would suggest waiving the second reading. Approve the first reading of that change and waive the second reading.
I move to approve the revised board policy 500. First reading
And waive the
Yeah,
second.
waive the second.
and waive the second, sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion to correct that. Any second?
I'll second.
Go ahead.
I'll
Okay,
second.
Michelle. Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Fisher.
Aye.
Fields.
Aye.
Dominic. Aye. Sylvia.
And then moving on to the board policy review 501.9 through 501.16. There were just a few changes noted in here.
Yep, so we're gonna remove 501.9A, which is the request for remote learning. That was a
COVID thing.
COVID deal. And then the other updates we'll look at is 501.10A, which just updates some of the language with our high school attendance policy. So some of the language that was in there specifically just looking under procedures for excused absences that will be just looking at adding the language of like all work missed during this time period is required to be made up prior to the end of the term's grading period unless otherwise explicitly stated by the instructor or administrator. So
Is that, and that, I could very well be wrong, but in my head, there's a, when we were working on graduation requirements, maybe, there was something about you could have an additional semester,
trimester.
an additional trimester to complete your work. So does that conflict with this statement, or are they two different? Are they
Not
two different?
necessarily. I think when we're looking at it, okay, so if we look for an excused absence, so it's like anything that we would delineate out as an excused absence is just saying, because what the language said was that, so if they missed 3 days, then they would have 3 days to be able to make it all up. But if it's some unforeseen circumstance that a student can't avoid, I mean, yes, they would still have an opportunity within another trimester with work or summer school to be able to make it up. What this is just saying is that it's not, they may not necessarily be held that 3 day unless the instructor or the administrator agrees to do that, to do it like to give them any longer time. So it gives a little autonomy back to our teachers really to say, well, if they can complete it within 3 days, or if they miss 3 days, then well, they have 3 additional days to be able to make it up. It's like something came up that was an excused absence that we have kind of a non-exhaustive list up just up above there and then under section B. So for section 2 right here, sorry. New rooms and stuff.
So in section 3B, number 6,
Section 3B, number.
next red section.
So in some
So-
cases, students and their guardians or families may be referred to the county attorney.
Yeah, is that like the state, that's how it should be handled?
Yeah. So if you kind of look at it from a process with attendance, I mean, if we're getting to 9 unexcused absences, which happens for several students, it's an option that we have that we can outline as it's a tool that we have if unexcused absences or poor attendance becomes such a persistent thing that we have it. However, what the county attorney is going to come back to us and say, have you tried?
Yeah,
Before they would even take it.
that's what I wondered is
But
how.
But I think it's important too for parents to know that attendance is mandatory. It's something that we just, we're trying to make it a thing, like coming to school is it's just something we do.
This is not a new thing, is it? I wonder how come this wasn't in there before?
I can't I'd say.
Yeah, I mean,
And you've had conversation with the attorney, you know, for,
With Thomas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had conversations with him even this year, and then he was the one who pushed back and said, well, have you had mediation meetings? Have you put him on an attendance plan? Have you tried, just like he just kept pushing back and pushing back and pushing back on us, and I don't think it's from a stance of try to make him give up. I think it's, have you exhausted everything within your resources or capabilities before you want to get involved?
yeah, you'd want
Makes sense.
prosecution to be the absolute last
Yeah.
resort, you know. I mean,
But- I think people take it serious when they read it.
yeah, but it should be in the
It should be.
policy.
Okay, so any other questions, or do we want to have a motion to approve with the changes in red?
I'll move we approve the changes in, let me get the name here. Board policy 501.9 through 501.16 with the noted changes in red.
Second.
Motion in a second, please call the roll.
Fields.
I,
Dominic.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Silva.
Aye. All right, next and last on our agenda is the appointment and oath of office of the new board secretary. Laura Marshall, I think that's you.
Gonna
So
make a motion first.
make a motion.
Make
and
a
then we get to
motion
swear
before
in.
you do though.
Okay. See, what if we could, Laura, you're gonna have to correct me. So do we have a motion to have Laura Marshall be our new board secretary?
I
So move. Go ahead.
Steve?
second.
Steve motion, and then it sounds like Cindy seconded. Motion in a second, please call the roll.
Fields.
I,
Dominic.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Silva.
Aye. Okay, now we get to swear you in.
Are we gonna do what Audrey makes all the kids do, stand?
Stand right in front of the camera.
Yes.
Yes.
Probably watching the whole time.
All right, so Laura, do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of school board secretary, respectively, in the Greene County Community School District, as now or hereafter required by law? I do. Wonderful, congratulations. All right.
I think,
We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
we need to have some kind of resolution thanking Brenda for. her
And now,
years.
now that we have adjourned,
So it's
Okay.
not in the minutes.
Okay. It can't
Okay,
be in the
sounds good.
minutes.
Well, she
We're
doesn't
listening
even
to
want
Brenda
us
and
to
not
say
putting it
it
in the
in
minutes. But
I
yes,
know.
we've been doing pretty good listening to her here this last year and a half. I feel like I'll keep doing it. So meeting is
Thank you.
adjourned at 6:08. So
And we